Fear is the most universal, most powerful, and most pernicious of our primal emotions. Fear is a defense mechanism. It can move us quite literally away from threats. But fear is also a debilitation, keeping us from taking risks. Both expressions of fear by themselves, however, are ultimately a distraction from the kind of leader this world needs you to be, and the kind of leader you want to be. Fear can keep your organization from achieving its goals. It can sabotage innovation, exploration, and discovery. Neurobiologically, fear suppresses the cognitive parts of your brain. Unattended fear can actually inhibit your thinking and obstruct you from seeing things clearly and intelligently. So knowing how to navigate fear is a critical skill in good leadership. One quick note. Please hear that what we're talking about is unattended fear, emphasis on the unattended. Fear is going to happen, and it can actually be a helpful tool. The problem is when fear is unnoticed and/or ignored. It is then that fear becomes a driving force behind how you lead, and that tends to bring about deleterious results. So the goal is not to eliminate fear. That's never going to happen. The goal is to become aware of the presence of fear, to understand it, and to direct it in ways that are going to be helpful rather than hurtful. So don't be afraid to fear. Be disciplined with it. To help us do that, I'd like to give you two simple filters, and they are simply name it and frame it. Name it. Now, I hope you'll forgive the cheesy and cliched simplicity of this, but every now and then cheesy and cliched simplicity is helpful for remembering. First, name it. Filter one is simply to actually identify what the fear is. The exercise here is not too dissimilar to what we went through before in naming what it is that we want. The problem here is the same. What we say that we're afraid of may not actually be what we're truly primally afraid of. And according to our understanding of the power of linguistics, naming it and actually saying it out loud is a powerful tool in addressing your fears, because it allows you to begin having power over your fears rather than having your fears unconsciously control and have power over you. So name it. What is it truly that you're afraid of? For example, you may be afraid of the competition. Say that out loud. But then ask yourself the question, is this really what you're truly afraid of? Because the reality may be that you're not so much afraid of the competition as you are afraid that you may not be up to the task of facing the competition. Your real fear then is not them. Your real fear is actually rooted in your insecurity, your uncertainty as to whether or not you believe you have the skills to get the job done. By the way, do not be ashamed of this kind of fear. The reason why I'm using this example is because insecurity is at the heart and root of virtually every dysfunction. We are all deeply insecure. Only sociopaths lack insecurity. So first, name it. If you were to do a search on leadership fears, you'll find list after list of things that we're afraid of as leaders. From the fear of making hard decisions, the fear of being criticized, to the fear of not being liked or the fear of being lonely, all relevant to how we lead. Naming and recognizing the thing you're afraid of is the first step in diminishing its power over your motivations and actions. And as we discussed in the previous lessons, naming your fears ensures that you're not distracted by the subconscious and automatic impulses of our primal emotions. And by the way, it's okay to have named and identified stated fears and primal fears. Both are going to be helpful to name. And both may actually be true at the same time in their own particular ways. Frame it. Second, frame it. And there's really only one question you need to ask here. Is the fear a positive or negative motivator? A positive motivator is a fear that leads you to action in accordance with your mission. If you lead a nonprofit in education, a positive motivator is being afraid that if children do not get educated, the community's flourishing will decline and there will be greater suffering. If you're in business, a positive motivator is being afraid that the market is going to shift and you may miss that opportunity to capitalize on that change. A negative motivator is a fear that channels your energies toward avoidance or aversion. If you lead a church, a negative motivator would be the fear of losing congregants. And so you perhaps compromise a bit on your stated mission and values, and you may avoid speaking the truth in the way you know you need to. If you lead a team, a negative motivator is being afraid of not being liked. And so you don't keep some people accountable for their delinquencies. You avoid a fundamental responsibility of a leader. Recognizing whether or not the fear is a positive motivator or a negative motivator is critical in understanding what place it has within your leadership. And as you can guess, fears that are positive motivators can be tremendously beneficial to your leadership, whereas fears that are negative motivators can be tremendously detrimental to your leadership. And if you can identify and live out of fears that are positive motivators and ignore or disempower the fears that are negative motivators, you've got a good foundation upon which you can achieve success. So name it and frame it. And once you've done that, act. It is important not to simply complain or berate the organization with the fear. That will only lead your people to a negative motivator. Do not tick off our leader. Rather, take the necessary steps to leverage your fears in the development of actionable steps that help your organization achieve its stated goals. Behave in a way that directly addresses the positively motivating fear and use that energy to inspire and empower your people toward your mission. In our examples just mentioned, being afraid of children not getting educated might lead you to audit the actual educational outcomes of the children you serve, and to begin analyzing ways in which your pedagogy could improve or addressing the social environment that affects children's learning behavior. If you are afraid of missing a market shift, don't just yell at your people about it. Turn that positively motivating fear into a decision about what departments continue to operate and which ones do not, with the input from various segments of your constituency. The point again is to avoid negative motivators that keep you from acting. Embrace the positively motivating fears that lead you to action, that inspire your people to change or develop, that improve your outcomes and objectives. And if you can persistently discipline your organization to process fear through the lens of a positive motivator that moves you to action in accordance with your mission and values, you've kind of got a leadership superpower. So, what do you want? What do you really want? What is your true motive? What do you fear? What is keeping you from acting? The last question we must ask is, what are you truly good at?